Meet Eva Kim, paragliding champion, adventurer and soul explorer. Eva is a woman who knows what it means to rise, literally and figuratively. As a paragliding champion and instructor, she's no stranger to soaring above limits, harnessing both the wind and her own inner strength. But Eva's journey is about so much more than sport. It's about courage, connection, and listening to the quiet call within. Whether she's navigating the skies or life's deeper currents, Eva brings a contagious spirit of freedom, joy, and resilience. She reminds us that when we dare to lift off from fear and lean into trust, we discover just how powerful and alive we truly are. Today, she joins us to explore the essence within you and how her own story continues to inspire others to rise, shine, and ripple that magic into the world. Hi, Eva. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show. Yeah, fantastic. Now, I have to acknowledge before we start that we're actually neighbours and we've been neighbours for about 5 years.
Probably.
Somewhere around there. And over the years, as you do when you get to know your neighbour to a certain degree, what I see is that you're incredibly strong, you're very resilient, you're passionate about a sport that you do, you have a big heart, you're very much into equality and fairness, into growth. You have 2 wonderful children, one who is an Olympic kite surfer, yeah, and you jointly own a business called Wings and Waves. So an amazing whole circle there, and I know there is a lot more about you and a lot more to you, and so I today want to find out a little bit more about your essence, your purpose, your why. Sounds big, but it's intriguing. And I think that we can all learn a little bit from each other.
Yes,
and I'd like to learn a little bit about you today.
You did get me a little bit worried saying you know a lot about me.
Not all the details, not all the details. So, Eva, you've accomplished a lot in your life so far, especially in paragliding. You've been a New Zealand champion 11 times. You probably can't remember.
Okay, somebody else counted 13 the other
13,
time.
okay.
I'm not sure, could be either.
Okay, so a New Zealand champion 13 times.
No,
you've won international cups, trophies, competitions, and I believe even a men's division where you got bored and thought, I'll enter the men's as well, and you bet them. So tell me, you're born in Germany?
Yes, I'm born in Bonn in Germany.
Bonn, I know Bonn.
Bad Godesberg.
Yes. How did you end up in New Zealand?
Well, that is a long story. I find this short version. After high school, as a reward for doing well at school, my parents gave me a budget for traveling, and I chose to buy a ticket to Los Angeles and become an au pair girl there, which still makes me laugh about it now. How on earth did anybody think that was a good idea? Yeah. I think it was just an idea how to go and travel for a long period of time and experience a different country. That didn't last too long. I think after about 2 months, there was a mutual decision that wasn't really for me. But at the same time, I had, by somewhat coincidence, met who is now my business partner, and the whole New Zealand America's Cup team, the challenge at the time, at a yacht club. The family I stayed with took me to this yacht club in Coronado every week, and every week they seemed to try to marry me off to some very boring person, which was just terrible. And that particular day, they said, "Oh, come to the yacht club." Oh, this time, all the really handsome New Zealand sailors are there. And I remember thinking, oh, God, here we go.
Sailors.
Here we go again, right?
Yeah.
So wisely, I darted to the bar first, thinking that will help. And that's where I met all the New Zealanders who seemed to think the same. Oh, we have to stay for an hour or two, we are told. That was a PR thing for the America's Cup. Yeah. And then we quickly decided that we all drive over the border to Mexico that same night.
As you do.
Go partying.
Yeah.
And we did go partying. And the next day, I was severely... hungover, yes. And tried to sneak out of the house and in the shade somewhere to the beach, and it was my day off.
Yes.
And this guy comes up the driveway and goes, "Hi, Eva, let's go then." And I remember looking at the guy going, "Who is he?"
Oh dear.
And turns out I had arranged the night before to go jet skiing the next day with this group of Kiwi sailors, which I had forgotten, to be honest. And off we went. So, and then I ended up working for the America's Cup team, for the New Zealand team. And that was in 88. And then we went back to Germany and traveling all around. And then we went back to San Diego. Ruben and I went out for about 5, 6, 7 years together. Then we went back in 92 and both had quite good jobs with the New Zealand Challenge. And after that, then we went to New Zealand to open a paragliding school.
Just like that. What a great story. So, paragliding. I'm really interested in that. What first inspired you to take it up?
We were first inspired when we went skiing one Christmas in Austria, and we saw people go up the mountain with or without skis in little colourful backpacks, and then we would see them fly off. And in those days, paragliders were very basic and not nearly as good as nowadays. You would basically fly down from a big mountain. And we saw these colourful gliders flying down while we were skiing. We thought, we have to do that. So came next summer in Europe. I bought Ruben a course for his birthday, a beginner course, paragliding. And I wasn't going to watch, of course, right? So I bought myself one too. Yeah. And we started paragliding. And then it just all went really quite quickly that we decided we really liked it. We did a second course. We got our ratings. And then we were just going to go flying and enjoy the sport. And we were so taken by it. For Ruben, it was like three-dimensional sailing. You know, it's like sailing with a lot of landscape, three-dimensional instead of two-dimensional. But similarly tactical and also technical. And, you know, and he's an awesome sailor. I'm not, you know, he is. But then the instructor we had at the time, it was all very new, you know, paragliding was quite new. He had made a deal with being in an Austrian beautiful village, with some people who were organizing holiday camps for English scouts, right? There were hundreds of kids there. And he had to cut some awesome deal to basically teach hundreds of young kids a day course paragliding. On the first day, he remembered that he didn't speak English very well. Hence, we got dragged into teaching right after learning ourselves, sort of, you know, with his supervision, of course. So we instantly started teaching paragliding straight out of our course and enjoyed it a lot. We really enjoyed it.
That's a great story and really probably tracked you to where you are today. Because to get that experience of being able to teach straight away after learning the sport must have taught you a lot. You talk about Ruben and how he found it, you know, three-dimensional. How did you find it? Like, what was it about the sport that you really connected with? Yes,
Ruben had done a lot of sailing and a lot of those sort of sports and windsurfing and that, and I hadn't. I did my first sail, or nearly my first sail, was on KZ1, you know, on that America's Cup boats. And I remember going back to the family saying, I went sailing with the New Zealanders today. And they went, what? What did you sail on? What sort of boat was it? And I went, quite big, quite wide, and pretty fast, you know. So, but I had no sailing experience. So for me, maybe even a little bit more, the magic of lifting and steering and the air around you and feeling so little in a big space. You know, it was so fascinating to me. And then immediately you learn about airflow and where lift is. It's so intriguing. I just loved it straight away. It was such an amazing challenge and very far away from other things I've ever done in my life at that stage.
I can imagine a little bit of, that feeling of what it's actually like. Tell me about, this is the bit that really intrigues me. You're up in the air, you must feel the flow, so you have an inner sense or an extra sensory of what's actually going on in the air.
Yes.
Because to me, it's quite vulnerable. You're out there. It's not as if you're in a plane that's you're in control. You're finding the wind.
Yes.
So you have extra sensory when you're up there.
Yes, you learn that. And some people, as with sailing, for instance, some people have more of a sense of that than others. And we notice when we teach people, some people are very mechanical. They do what they're told. But you sort of think, come on, can't you feel, But that's a wonderful challenge for us, and I'm totally into that, to teach people how you feel and what you feel, to help people develop this sense, this extra sense, because this flying in air on big thermals, you might launch on a small or a big mountain, and then you use the thermals to go all the way up to cloud base. And usually in the first instance, you concentrate so hard, or maybe Eva's on the radio and tells you what to do, or you do it by yourself. And suddenly you realize, oh my God, look where I am, and where I came from. And usually it's this moment where you look down and you go,
because how high do you go? What is the highest that you've been?
Oh, what's the highest? When we fly on the coast, we just fly a couple of times as high as the cliff, roughly. That's what we call coastal soaring or ridge soaring.
Coastal soaring.
Or ridge soaring, which is dynamic wind. The wind just pushes up. When we go inland flying or thermal cross-country flying, we use the thermals, hot air going up, and circle in them like gliders do, like lots of birds do.
Yes.
And they usually go as high as wherever the cloud base is, where the cloud develops. That's called the dew point, where the warm, moist air that rises condensates, and when it condensates, it cools down, and that's more or less where it stops. It could go higher.
So that's your kind of boundary.
Yes, and we're not allowed to fly into the cloud because that's not legal.
Yes.
You never know who else is in there.
Yes.
But there were a few good stories about that. But so usually there, and that depends. Say north of Auckland, we have a lot of sea breeze. We've got a lot of cold air, a lot of moisture in the air. So the cloud base is something like 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet. That's relatively low. It gives you an amazing view up north. We fly somewhere near Puhoi, and when you get to cloud base, even if it's lower than that, you see the east coast and the west coast, or the island.
Wow.
You see downtown and the sky tower, and you look all the way up the North Island. That's
how incredible.
It's really beautiful. In other areas where maybe the ground is a bit higher or where it's a bit drier, bigger continent, we get a lot higher than that. We get to I remember getting quite hypoxic ones around the 5,000 meter mark, which is happens in Spain and in the mountains. And so then you're such a long way above the ground that your perspective changes entirely. The world looks different, and it's even hard to see where you came from. It seemed to be such a big mountain. You launched from a big area, a ski lift or something, and then you're suddenly that high, and you go, I don't know where I am. Where did I come from?
I mean, that just blows my mind. And for me, there's that big element of fear. It's you. There's no protection. You're just sitting in something with a.
It's a really mix of feeling very accomplished to have got there without a motor. That's your sort of skill using the air. It's always forever to me somewhat intimidating. Because because you're so little, and you're just part of a big weather system where you can use the lift, predict the wind and deal with it. But in the end of the day, you're very small and insignificant. And I love that in a way. It just literally gives you a different perspective on life. Definitely a lot smaller than we all think.
And yet so powerful to be able to take yourself up that high, but you still feel that vulnerability.
Absolutely, because if the weather turns really bad, which you should be able to predict, or but you don't always get it right, you are very small. Part, and you don't have any power, and you don't have any power to control anything.
And when you're up in that high space, what do you think about? What or are you just so focused on flying?
You don't want to know, Sue.
Yeah, I think we do. But what do you do? You dream about stuff, or do you have to stay so present to the technical what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a bit of all of those. There are phases in your flight where you just really concentrate. I'm just thinking about recently with a friend in France motivated me to do a really cool, adventurous flight. We flew all the way around the Mont Blanc Massif in one day, in one hit, 3 countries, from France through Switzerland, through Italy, back into France. And during that flight, I'll show you some pictures somewhere. Sometime it's amazing. There are times where you just think, oh, look at the view. It's so beautiful. Aren't I lucky and happy to be able to do the sport and to feel comfortable there? And look, there's one of my best mates and it's so much fun and it's great. Other places, I get completely intimidated still. On the Italian side, the air got so rough that somebody in front of me had a lot of problems. And I thought, ooh, I want to go land. No, I don't want to fly anymore. I don't like it. But then you get through that and then you get to enjoy the view again. And you see always the air constantly changes. It's never entirely predictable, not even after, how long have I flown? 36 years of flying like that. It's not predictable entirely, even when you read the forecast. So, yeah, and sometimes I sing. I can't sing, so it's good that I only sing there. Nobody hears me. I have to remind myself when I fly tandem. Poor person. Don't want to do that.
Oh, that's right. There's someone here with me.
I've got And yeah, I definitely sing at times because I just enjoy it. It's like I could not be sometimes more joyful and happier.
And isn't that a beautiful way to actually be engaged in a sport? Do you call it a sport, or do you call it for you, or is it a hobby, or is it?
It's a sport for me. It's definitely a sport. Yes,
yeah. To get that amount of joy, and I think, in the work that I do, working with so many different people who are always looking for something to feel fulfilled about, to feel that joy. It comes in lots of different places, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And everybody does something different, right?
Exactly. And I think it's always a great reminder to that there are lots of possibilities where you can find that joy.
Yes.
And it just so happens for you that it's something that's quite incredible. Doesn't have to be that incredible to find the joy. And I'm really interested too. You have 2 children. Mm-hmm. You taught them to fly at a young age?
Yes.
How old?
Well, Lucas's story is a bit not really right. Look, my son, who's my older one.
Traumatize him?
No, not at all. Not at all. He was always so keen. He's the one who now kite foils professionally, and obviously he's that way inclined. I would drag him along to the paragliding practicing hill. He would run around with a tiny, tiny kite when he could. I've got some pictures of him being 4 or 5-ish, running around with just not nothing you can fly with, but something that's a little bit similar to a paraglider, playing around. But I also have a photo of him being 5 or 6 and doing just a little flight of a little, just not in reach, you know. And Ruben, my business partner, letting him fly, and the way he sits there and does it, you can see even on the photos that he took like duck to water. It was amazing. And then he did little flights and played around. And then, of course, he because he came along with me a lot on the weekends. He then got quite good at it, and then had a few slightly bigger flights. And by the time he was under 10, we took him to a bit bigger hill up north one day, and all our students were flying down, a little bit extended glide, launch, help them launch on the radio, fly down, one of us on the landing, helping land. And we thought, Lucas can do that. And Lucas was so keen, he wanted to do that too. And by then he was probably better than most of those students that we had. So he flew off and he did really well. And then I realized there was a little bit of a thermal. I had him on the radio and I said, fly just a little bit to the right there. Do a little circle, Lucas. And sort of one thing led to the other, and next minute, Lucas with us under 10 was at cloud base. It was a low cloud base, And I was sort of looking at that. No, Ruben was actually beside me. Ruben and I looked at each other. That's kind of wrong, isn't it? Somehow that doesn't feel right. So we had him fly down and this and that, and we had to talk about it. And we said, we can't hold him back anymore. He's terribly good. But it's not right, because small children can't manage risk, and they can't, they
don't quite have that mental capacity.
He had the capacity and the ability otherwise. So I think he was just under 10. And then so we distracted him from there on for the next few years. Said, go kite surfing mainly, come out every now and again. And we basically didn't really let him fly for a while. And then 2 years later or 3, he was New Zealand champion freestyle kite surfing.
There you go.
But for us the risk was easier to manage. We could give him very obvious boundaries.
Yeah.
You can only go this close to the rocks. If you go any closer, you have to go in. If you do it, then you're in trouble with us. And so it seemed easier to set him boundaries there. And then he came back to flying later.
Amazing. And going back to the fear, which I can imagine a lot of people would think about the sport. Like even for myself, I go, I just, that feeling of being out there and my responsibility, and I feel so vulnerable. When you're teaching, because you have a large teaching school all over New Zealand, don't you? In Auckland and down in Wanaka and everywhere, but you also train and teach people overseas.
Yes.
How do you, for people who are trying it for the first time, how do you help them overcome that fear, that inner, conversation that they're going, oh, I don't know if I can do this?
Well, most people who come out to learn paragliding, and rather than come for a trial flight in a tandem with us, they have to a large degree made that decision already by the time they sign up. People who come for a trial flight, not so much. And nearly everybody there tells, you should know I'm scared of heights. And I usually tell them that most people are scared of heights. I'm scared when I stand on a edge because it's a rational fear that you could fall, right? Where nearly everybody, even those people who say that, once they watch a couple of launches how it works, you talk them through it, you lift off, and there's usually a scream, or very often a scream.
That first realization.
Yes, exactly. But then most people are actually fine. But then more so during the process of learning, from going little launch practice and steering practice and landing practice, little hops, a little bit bigger hops, that is usually relatively easy for people. People are scared, or people often before their first launch off the hill says, by the way, I'm scared. And I always think I would be surprised if you weren't, of course.
I'd actually probably, you'd be worried if someone wasn't.
Oh, they'd worry us far more. Those people, what could possibly go wrong? Well, shall I tell you? No, so yes, people have fear, but more so we learn it then when we, like my Wanaka courses, when I take people into big mountains and big thermals and rough air, and that's where people get really quite scared. And they're, like the entire progression through the course, it's important to really take it step by step and really allow people
more comfortable.
Really allow people to do it in their own time. And what we learned over the years is where you push people a little bit, you can do that. You should really go and not teach them not to always hold back. Or as soon as they get scared, go to the back of the queue. And again, because then you have so much more time to get more worried and get more scared. And then you know how we look for affirmation of our thoughts, then they see somebody launching badly and maybe doing something. And then they get more and more worried. So there are times when we really push them a little bit with the knowledge that we've taught them all along. We know what they can do, and we know how gliders react, and we know what the conditions are like. Then sometimes we really reassure them that I wouldn't send you out now if I wouldn't know you can do this, if I wasn't sure that the conditions are suitable for you and that everything is
and
good.
That kind of gives someone a bit of that own inner confidence, doesn't it?
Exactly.
That you go, well, you can see
I know that you can. Yes, I know you can do that. And most people, they are scared at times for sure. And that's actually the fear remains a big factor in flying all through everybody's flying career. You always get to a point where you scare yourself again, or you lose your confidence and you get too worried for different reasons.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you said even for yourself, you still have that element of...
And it comes and goes, and it has got a lot to do with your confidence, which has a lot to do with people's currency. If you fly a lot and you're very used to, you flew yesterday and you fly tomorrow. Yeah. But when you have big gaps and then in a different place, in different conditions, but it also very much depends on where you're at in your life and in your head anyway, you know, where we all have confident phases in our life. And yes, and phases where we doubt everything about ourselves, including our paragliding skills at that stage. You know?
And that's very true. Yeah, it's a very good point. You know, people come and go, and one day you feel you can do something, and then a week later, just because of where your head is, your mind is at, your emotions are at, you feel like
what
you
happened
can't.
in your life around you.
And,
your hormonal state makes a big difference. I think menopause is difficult for that, because I think a lot of things are changing, so you don't necessarily feel the same.
You don't feel as connected.
But then in the air, everything gets sort of hyper sensible. Then you very much notice it through that time as well, that your appreciation of risk changes again. And when you have kids, when I first had kids, you know, didn't do any good to my flying, that's for sure. You know, I grew more careful, obviously, because you rationally can't hurt yourself and be out of action. And, you know, I remember thinking that once during a flight. I was in Spain, and Lucas, who was little, was with my mum in Germany, and I went for a competition, which I loved. But there was a time when it was really rough, really quite strong. Some people had accidents. And I vividly remember thinking, I cannot hurt myself. Lucas needs me to look after him. My mum can't, you know, this and that. I have to earn money. My business partner needs me. I cannot hurt myself. And I think lots of people don't do that. Lots of men do that far less than women do that, you know, and the having children obviously adds a serious component.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? It's that nurture side of us of having to exist, that we when you have children, you're there to protect and
you just can't allow it to be out, even if you just hurt yourself and you have a broken leg and then you're a bit incapacitated. I mean, you know, I immediately thought about the consequences on everybody else if I do that, how selfish that would be. So I really couldn't. There were phases where I didn't compete well because I was flying too carefully to do really well.
Yeah, amazing. And tell me, when you think about your sport, your business, teaching other people an amazing sport opportunity, freedom, how do you think that has influenced your life?
Oh, it gives me. I was actually going to say that before. Where flying, having a successful, wonderful flight, gives me that much joy. But it gives me far more joy to do that with my friend, to take somebody along, to teach somebody else to do that who hasn't done that before. And I know what it feels like. Hence, I can do that, you know. The ability for me to make people that happy is amazing, you know.
I love that.
Keeps it,
and making people happy.
Yes.
You know,
well, it's them doing it, but I can facilitate that, and I can teach them the skills, and I can help them gain this confidence and grow a confidence in them that they might not have realized they have, you know, we get people who just want to do a little course and they don't want to go inland flying because that's too scary. But that's sort of my little thing I love doing, to then sort of nurture them along and show them what they actually can do. And the happiness and the joy and the accomplishment and you know, the people feel when they then land and I'm there and I help them somewhat do that. That is so rewarding.
Oh, I can imagine a real buzz to see someone light up themselves by experiencing something that you've experienced for many, many years, but you can then share it. And that's what I always refer to, you know, in my business as your ripple effect, the impact of what you're passionate about, what you love, what you're about, how you show up in the world and your talents and how you share them with other people can create that ripple effect of change. And I think for someone to learn something new, especially something as technical as paragliding, it must give such a huge boost of confidence within them that it would remind them when they might find something a little bit harder in their life or they don't have the confidence to actually go, hang on a minute, I did that and I do this. And you probably remind yourself of that when times are tough too.
Yes, absolutely. All my friends remind me of that if I'm ever allowed. But it's like that. I was at the Olympic pinning ceremony yesterday where my son got his little Olympic pin and a number, and there were a number of speeches, and that's one thing several of the experienced sports people or coaches or people who were there were mentioning, that once an Olympian, always an Olympian, and that your sporting ability or your sport might drift away in your life, but having accomplished so much and achieved so much and having shown resilience to get where they were, nobody gets there without hurdles or without lows and without knockbacks. That is something that stays with you. And that then it doesn't matter which sport you do or what you do, does it? But especially when you put yourself out there and do something that you haven't done before, you didn't really think yourself you could do, and then you find out you can. This is it's exactly that effect you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think that's a big life lesson for me and for lots of people who experience that. And I think it's I wish everybody could experience that because, in today's crazy world, I think having those little reminders and the talents that we've built up doing the things that we do help us in the day-to-day.
Yeah. In addition to the accomplishment in this, nearly everywhere where we fly is exceptionally beautiful. You see beautiful countryside, beautiful cliffs, beautiful mountains, and you do see it from a special perspective, literally, because we have a full 360 view. No aircraft does that, Sometimes in a balloon you can look off the edge, in an airplane you can look out of the side windows, but we get there's just a little paraglider on one in the way on the top, but otherwise we see everything and we turn and we constantly change our perspective. And I love that about it. And most paraglider pilots, passionate paraglider pilots, love nature, a bunch of tree huggers one way or the other, or definitely very appreciative of beauty of nature.
And I think that goes hand in hand, and, the nature has its own sort of special essence, I suppose, in terms of its impact on people, whether you're up in the air like yourself or down on the ground. And I think that always exudes from people. And, when I was talking before about having known you for a few years, that I really sense that from you, that whilst you're strong and resilient and very accomplished, you have this soft side and this connection with nature that just has something really nice.
Thank
you. So what's next for you? Because you obviously have your business, teaching other people, and you go out and have your enjoyment with your friends. And is there something next after this, or do you feel like it's just a progression?
A bit of both. It's definitely a point in my life right now where I feel I have time and I've got energy to do something else.
Yeah.
When the kids are out of the house for a couple of years, we suddenly have time. It's just amazing.
I know.
And so much freedom to go home or not go home or go traveling and that. And I don't really, I wondered about it. I did a couple of competitions this year in Europe, paragliding competitions, to see how much that still lights my fire.
Yeah.
And turns out that's not what I'm going to do.
Interesting. So you don't feel driven with that competitiveness of competitions.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't really do it for me so much. Which is interesting because now that I have time, I could actually get good again, right? And I could work, and I think I'm actually flying better than I have ever flown before, but not in a competitive sort of way. It was actually a really funny day. We had this competition in a really beautiful place in southern France where, as a very young thing, I used to fly tandems there. And the last day of the competition, after a week of very average weather, was a really good day. But because the prize-giving ceremony were logistical things, they just said a really short task and land somewhere nearby. And I thought, that's a waste of a good day, isn't it? I'd like to go somewhere else. There's this classic route, the really cool flight you can do. So I talked a couple of other people in coming with me. We handed our trackers back. We have little trackers.
Oh, you said we're not participating.
We are not. And they said, why don't you? No, we're not flying today. And we flew off 50, 100 Ks, the opposite direction.
Wow.
And I took 2 friends from Hawaii, ex-students of mine, who are good now, into it. And they said, oh, we feel like the kids who are wagging school.
The naughty kids.
And that was a good example of where it gave me far more joy to fly that long-distance flights with my mates and land together. And then one of the wives was nice enough to come and pick us up. And we had such a nice day. You know, that gave me
got more
joy out of it. But I talked others into it, not because I need company as such, but because it is much more fun. It's just so much more fun. I had done that flight before, they hadn't. And they hadn't done any flight like that before. So that wasn't me working. I wasn't being paid. I was just dragging my mates along.
What a cool sport to be doing with your friends.
Yes, exactly. So that's not it, the competition. And so I've dabbled a little bit around doing a website here and there for charity, because that's quite easy for me to set up easy ones. And I've done a bit of sort of volunteer work here and there. And I haven't entirely put my finger on it. But one thing I notice is, despite a lot of parts of New Zealand or the world sort of changing to the better in terms of equality and feminism, it's still a dirty word, feminism, for many people. And especially in the environment I live in paragliding, it's 90% men, for sure. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And so I've always sort of stood my own there, and and I think a lot of my desire to do well in competition was also to show that I had to prove that I'm a good pilot or a good instructor, where all the blokes didn't have to do that. They all seemed to be fine without any. Yes, well, it's. I think it works like that in the corporate world.
And then you took it to that next level and into the men's competition.
Yeah, well, no, you always sort of fly with the men as well.
Yes.
So my goal was always to be first woman in New Zealand, and when I was competing, and that in some years was easy and some years not. But then I always wanted to be in the top 10 of the men's, just to make a point,
to put that full stop there.
Yes, and that usually worked. But I basically battled it for myself a little bit. And I think nearly all women in the sport do that, in a sport like that, or in an environment like that. You know how we used to say women politicians or women CEOs, they're, like nearly an honorary bloke. People used to say that, and they are tougher, or they try to be tougher because they try to play on other people's terms, right? That's often an issue. And I think I've done that too, that I try to prove myself in a way that's acceptable to the 90% blokes. And I took myself quite a lot of freedom in certain things, and I know people roll their eyes about me all the time and still do. Yeah. But I think I want to really do more in empowering women to fly, women to do this and that. And I think that is a good pathway for me now. Because with menopause, and I had a few really unpleasant situations in the same situations where I ended up I had to complain formally about people were very unfair to admin. Something that ended up going to court, and that that wasn't funny. And I'm sure there was a misogynistic factor in that. Very, very sure about that. Apparently not at all, right? But to help change organizations and understanding of how you need to work together, and how women can find themselves a decent place in that environment without having to adjust be something. Yeah, and people don't, at the moment, women are not necessarily that supportive of each other, because I think they all sort of battle their own little battles and are too busy with that, and they don't want to be seen as a girl that needs support, So, I've been running a few ladies' courses, which is the first in New Zealand, and they've been amazing. They're basically the same course I run, only that it's only women and I teach, In Australia, they do a lot of women's courses, but they're always taught by men, which to me is so wrong.
Well, I think there's something even more empowering for you to be teaching other women, because, women get women, men get men.
Yes.
And for something that's so personal in terms of achievement when you go and learn something, especially as technical and in my view is something quite big to go and learn.
Yes, and it has a lot to do with your emotional way of handling this, you see.
Yeah.
And while we all know that 400-meter runners' bodies are different between men and women, I mean, we now know that obviously our inside or the way we deal with emotions is completely different too. And that's why women teaching women is actually a lot more effective.
Yeah.
With those courses were just great. For one, we had lots of fun and lots of laughter and cooked well, and we might have drunk a few bottles of wine in the evenings and stuff. But the communication was so much easier. You know, what you need to learn, what did you like about this flight? So much more direct, so much more effective, you know, that nobody felt they have to prove that they're brave too, you know. And
speak up
none of that.
It was ask a silly question.
I found it really empowering for everybody there. It's wonderful, you know. So I think I'll do a bit more like that, although I'm getting a lot of sort of undermining going on at the moment, you know, from people who don't really like that so much. And it's not a negatively feminist thing to do, but it's just a positive way to find space, you know, for
absolutely,
and making your own space. But you know,
but
it's
empowering other women
exactly
is always something that I think is a wonderful ripple effect. If you can empower other women to find their confidence, their power, to make them feel like they shine brighter in the world because they've learnt something that they feel quite unique about.
Yeah.
Great conversation in it, and I'm always just full of admiration for because from my view, I just go, I'd be terrifying of doing that. But I know, you know, that's a mental thing.
Have I taken you for a tandem yet?
No.
Oh,
let's just move on.
Sunday looks good.
Sunday. Okay. If there was a message that you could share with people who will listen to this or watch this about your life experience, which has been very rich and rewarding, not without its challenges as well. But what's something you would share with people to take away? It's a big question.
It is a big question. I probably should go home and write a book about that. Come back to you in a couple of years.
Someone might just
I think the biggest thing is to surround yourself with people in an environment that allows you to really be yourself and really be your best version you often talk about. And just stop early to try to please people who don't like you. They don't like what you do, and they don't like, you know, and understand that that's fine. They can dislike you. But to just put yourself in a position where you can be yourself, and hence then you are a very positive influence on the people around you, and accept the help from them. And that's sort of living more together with people who are worth it, you know, and people who appreciate you. I think that's sort of what I
love that.
Really feel strongly about.
I think especially in today's world where there's a lot of people trying to be something for everybody, and just with the sheer nature of life being so busy, you know, I just see a lot of people that are quite disconnected from themselves, and they've forgotten who they are, and especially, you know, talking about females or who have had families, that you kind of lose yourself sometimes in the fact that you're giving so much and looking after and nurturing that you forget about yourself.
Especially nowadays, I think, where women are nearly expected, or they want to be everything at the same time, right? They want to be successful in a job, be super slim, always be young, be a fabulous mother, and, you know, all that together. It's so easy to lose yourself in that. And I think then you lose your own power to be good for and with and with other people.
Yeah.
You know, when you find with your friend or your neighbor, you end up being a good influence or be just there for them and be helpful, and they like being with you and you like being with, and you empower each other without really doing anything. I think that is such a wonderful thing to do, and if we all slow down a bit and allow ourselves to do that, I think that's very
and that's
valuable.
true. Slow down a little bit and people connect. So my final question for you today is, you leave this world one day, what would you like people to remember you for?
The last party. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's not a bad answer.
No, just kidding. I try to take myself not too seriously and don't. I think sometimes we all overestimate how important we are as individuals, because really, when somebody dies, the world just carries on, right?
It does, yeah.
You might, and I think the best thing we can do is that we had positive relationships and people felt they gained from you and they learned something from you. I think that's probably all we can hope for, because, you know, I'm not the richest, busiest, or do anything that much better than everybody else. But maybe that I try to do everything I do well and try to be a very good friend to people around me, and a good mother, of course. That's a big deal, you know. That sort of thing, that I really tried my best with all my flaws, which, you know, are blatantly, blatantly obvious to most people, you know. That, I'd really tried to be the best person to the important people around me that I can be.
And I think that's lovely. Thank you. And I think, you know, I always love that question, because I think sometimes we can get, again, so caught up in doing that we forget who and how we're impacting this life that we're living and what we might be remembered for.
Yes.
And it might not be, you know, those far distant people that we might have interacted with work-wise or on our travels or whatever, but our family, you know, the next generations to come. Who was that? You know.
But that's what I noticed with my last travels, that in so many places I've been, I've got good friends because we did something nice together, or we did something for each other, or we experienced something together. And I feel so lucky for all the wonderful connections I've got. And that makes me very happy.
And I think connections is a huge part of life.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I think it's most important. That's what really.
Absolutely.
Forget your career or your success or definitely your money or the size of your house. Or I mean, it's lovely, and we all do well, because when you strive hard in one area, you usually do well in others as well, don't you? And we, you know, lots of us have done all right for themselves, but the connections and the richness you get from your connections, that's the most important thing.
I think so too. and I think that's a great message to finish today on. And just before we do, I have this little gift to give you, which is I think kind of sums up exactly where we got to. And it's a quartz heart. And
it's beautiful.
And part of that reason of giving you that is also just as a reminder that that connection, that heart, coming back to heart-based living and connecting with our heart and what's meaningful to me is key to everything. So thank you so much for coming today and being a special guest, and keep that heart close by.
It is my pleasure, and thank you very much, Sue.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to the show today. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like more of this, then subscribe to my channel or click on the QR codes for more tips, tricks, and strategies on how to lead yourself stronger through life.